Hello and welcome to the Storytellers Club podcast. Each week we chat with the creators behind some of your favorite or soon-to-be favorite stories. I'm your host, Chris Hicks. Thank you for joining us again today. We have another great guest for you this week. Some of you might know him by his Reddit handle, Grand Theft Motto, one of the most read storytellers in the No Sleep community of all time. We will be discussing one of those stories today, his award-winning and soon-to-be adapted short story, Something Walks Whistling Past My House Every Night at 3:03. This story appears in his House with 100 Doors short story collection, but is also available to read over on Reddit. So if you'd like to read the story before continuing, you may do so now. Welcome back. All right, sit tight. Have a listen. Recording in progress. There we go. So, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to be here. Yeah, this is a year in the making. The idea for this actually happened about a year ago, and then things got a little crazy on my end, and finally just, things have settled down enough to where I feel like I have the bandwidth to finally handle this process. So, yeah, glad you came back.
Absolutely.
Question I have for you. Tell us about your journey into writing. So how did you get to today?
Okay, just the whole timeline
Yes.
encapsulated like an elevator discussion.
Yes.
Okay, well, I have always been a voracious reader since elementary school, and I was especially into, I don't know if you had it where you were. We did this thing where you would read and then you would earn points and you could use them for like scholastic rewards at school.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so I've got ADHD and I really hyper focused on that. So it's something where I figured I was reading so much, I might as well write. And I started writing just the worst stuff you've ever seen, middle school through high school. And then when I was in college and I had to pick a major, I said I might as well do English literature because, I've just always really enjoyed books. So it was a very simple A to B journey in terms of I really like reading. I'm going to try writing. After college, with that degree, I got into journalism, and that was very good because it's very much a throw you in the deep end of the pool. You have to at least get your basic writing skills up to par because people
Right.
read it every week and they'll tell you if it's awful, and which they did. So while I was doing it professionally as a reporter, I also kind of found No Sleep, I think completely by chance. One of my buddies might have been reading it. I can't remember what the story was that brought me in, but I hadn't written fiction for myself since college, and that was coursework. So No Sleep was really that kick in my pants to get back to writing for what I wanted to write
Right.
and really enjoyed it. And I'm sure you've had the same experience where, you post one thing that gets popular and it's such a great rush of validation as a writer. Like, oh my
Exactly.
God. I think during college I had like a WordPress blog where I put a story and if 5 people on the internet found it in a month, I was ecstatic. Like, wow, I'm gonna blow up.
Yeah.
So that's where it was. And No Sleep was such a huge confidence booster that I started writing a lot more. Started working for some podcasts, writing for YouTubers. Got a couple collections through Velix, and then recently sold a story to an independent filmmaker that's going to be an anthology. So it's been a fun ride.
Yeah. So how did the anthology thing come about? Not your anthology, but the short story, and what am I trying to say? The
The film
video,
one,
the film one, yes. The
yeah.
Tales from the Void, is that the one?
Tales from the Woody, and I don't even know
Yeah.
how much I can talk
I was
about
gonna
it.
say, I don't want to violate any NDAs, so we won't go in too deep on that then. So we'll leave that
Okay,
for
yeah, not
later.
too much.
Yeah.
I'll just the basics of well, they found one of my stories on Reddit, and that's one of those things where if you just have again a few popular ones, there are people looking on Reddit
Right.
uh, for material, and they reached out. They really enjoyed the story. Started that whole. I got to learn about the kind of the Schrodinger's process that you're talking about of when something's optioned. Is it moving forward? Is it gone and dead forever? So it's interesting. You learn a lot very quickly when you're working with the contracts and the option process and actually getting things finalized and moved into production. So that was neat. But yeah, it was found through No Sleep, and another reason why No Sleep will always have a place in my heart.
Yeah. So they found it. You didn't actually submit it to
They
them.
found it. I didn't submit it. Yeah,
Okay.
no, they came to me.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. So coming from the journalism side of things. Has that influenced your writing process? Are you an outliner? Are you a I've got an idea, let's just see where
Pantser
this
all the
goes? Really?
way. No, yeah, terrible pantser. And I don't know if that's because of the journalism or just because of my personality, but and it does. And I think that biggest part with being a reporter helped is that it cleaned up my prose a lot. It definitely, I bled purple a little bit for a while
Yeah.
there. But when you have to actually write for a newspaper, all of that goes, and it really helped me
Oh yeah.
strip down, yeah, to the more beigey experience, but one that I think is good and that I like a lot and kind of fits my own voice.
Yeah. We have to leave room for the ads that pay for these words. So use fewer words.
Yep.
Yeah. So do you still do the journalism stuff or is that kind of moved away?
Yeah, that was a few years ago. So after that, I'm still in communications. So after being a reporter, I moved into public information, which is kind of a common pipeline,
Right.
working for state government. And then after that, and public health side, I have now moved and transitioned into emergency management.
Oh, okay.
Communications. So still all communications. I'm not like jumping out of helicopters or anything cool. I'm more like typing on Twitter about what other people are doing, but it's all still related to the same field.
Oh yeah, it's still part of the process. Yeah. Yeah. Fair. So who are some authors that you feel like influenced you or kind of got you moving more towards the horror side of things?
And I know that everyone says King, but he really is kind of the big. Paul Tremblay has been one of my
Oh
recent
yeah.
kicks. Yeah, he's amazing. It's great to see really talented people in that space. Neil Gaiman isn't, I guess, always the person you would think for horror, but I think that he writes the same kind of genre that I love, which is more like dark fairy tales and sort of
Right.
modern fantasy that leads itself towards horror. H.P. Lovecraft, for all of him being just a terrible person, the mythos that he created is such a rich place to poke around and draw inspiration from. So
Right.
all of
Yeah.
that, and then I'm a horror movie fanatic, so that influences just the stories I like to read and tell. And I don't know if you've seen Talk to Me, but I recently watched that. My gosh, that reawakened a lot of the feelings I had when I first saw like The Exorcist. It is just such a good, well-made horror story.
It is. And watching that movie, it plays just like a no sleep story
I
because
was thinking it
there's
would crush No Sleep.
yeah, it would yeah, because it's basically like here's the standard like the standard format of no sleep. It's like, all right, there's a mystery of something that happens, but there's also a rule, and you never have to explain why those things happen. It's just that's what it is. Right? There's this mystery. Oh, there's this hand that people think is was a embalmed or what I forget what the reason it was. It was it a psychic's hand that was basically casted and then like you hold the
They were
hand?
arguing about it. It's either a dead medium's hand or a dead
That's right.
Satan's hand. Yeah, which is not because
Yeah.
it also lends into you don't ever really know, and they don't feel obligated to fully explain it, which makes it so much better.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what no sleep is like, like you start with a you start with a premise and then there's a rule and then somebody eventually breaks or tests the rule and then shit goes downhill from there. So yeah, I agree. I love that movie. I rented it and then I bought it. It's just like so very well done. So and like yeah, the scares in it are I mean it has some jump scares in it, but there's just some like I don't know, some of the scenes where, people they're talking to the entities and it's just
Terrifying.
creepy to watch. Yeah, yeah.
You just don't like the villain basically, which is I guess kind of the collective dead undead in that, and they are just monstrous in the best way.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge one.
Yeah. Any other films you've seen recently that have jumped into your
Oh man, what are some good ones we've seen recently? I don't know. I do like anything that has kind of that the rule break that you mentioned. And I know
Mhm.
on No Sleep sometimes you've seen OOC post every couple of months about like they're all rule stories. But something about horror, coming back fundamentally is just that transgression.
Right.
They even talk about it and kind of poke fun at it in Cabin in the Woods, where they're like, well, if they don't transgress, they can't experience the consequences.
Right.
So that's what horror is for me a lot, is kind of like poking at what happens if you break those rules, what's the worst possible outcome,
Yeah.
and then we can experience it safely. But in terms of other recent horror movies that have been really good. I don't know how much we count recent, but It Follows has always been,
Yeah.
since I saw it, a big one. Babadook lives rent free in my head pretty much forever.
Yeah. No, those are both good. Yeah. It Follows actually getting a sequel coming out in the future at some point. I don't know what
I
the
hope they
timeline
call
is
it
on that.
It Still Follows
I think
or
it's
something similar.
They Follow, I think
Oh,
is what
okay.
the name. Yeah. So it's kind of they're making it more, I guess. So I don't know I think there's going to eventually be a trilogy. So be It Follows, They Follow, and then Everyone Follows. I don't know where they go from there. It Follows again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
something
glad it's
like
not
that.
just It Follows 2, because that sounds kind of
Yeah.
there, you know.
Yeah. It Follows, comma TOO. There you go. But yeah, but that one too kind of follows the classic horror as a kind of a morality tale. Like, the original like horror like slasher movies, it was always, kind of the rules that they bring up in Scream, like, the two kids that have sex, those are the ones that die. Anybody who
Yeah.
sins, they have earned their death, and then it's always the chaste, pure final girl who survives. And
Mhm.
It Follows, it's kind of like, all right, you had sex. All right, now this thing's going to follow you. You need to get away from it or have sex with somebody else so it starts following them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a
Well,
fun
and
little
that's, some
story.
of the greatest horror ever is stuff that really examines different things that might have happened. It Follows could be about sex and transgression, could be about STDs. I always think about the original Romero Dawn of the Dead, which is just like clearly he freaking hates capitalism and where it's going, and it's all about so much more about how the horror of the mall and the horror of the zombies. And that's neat. I think it's a cool thing where whenever you're working on a horror story and those other themes start popping up naturally,
Mhm.
you get to explore whether it's a societal issue or an environmental issue, or even Talk to Me is kind of it's a lot about grief, but it could also be about sensationalizing stuff that's happening because the kids are all like Gen Z or whatever gen we're on now, and they're filming this stuff, and it's normal for them to go to a party and one of their friends gets possessed. Instead
Right.
of using their freaking minds, they're like, let's put it on TikTok or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's the fun part of that. It's like, yeah, the social media kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of the same thing. Like all kids, I think at some point find some way of being reckless, and it kind of falls into that, 'cause like, not me necessarily, but I remember, growing up, there were kids there was a quarter mile road. It was a longer road, but there was a quarter mile that was straight that every like Friday night they would go out and like race on it. So that until the police finally got wise to it and decided, all right, we're just going to camp out here every Friday, and it finally fell apart. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, there's always youth are always, I mean, everybody feels like they're um indestructible between the
Yeah,
ages of 17 and like 25, and then you start waking up, and the aches and pains start happening, and then
all
next
falls
thing you know,
apart.
you're yeah, just kind of all falls apart. Yeah. With writing, so now having the day job, how do you balance writing with family obligations, with day job obligations? How do you manage that? Because that's something that I personally had struggled with significantly, just trying to find time to write when you've got kids, you got wife, you've got a job that's pays the bills, and then always hoping that writing will someday pay all the bills, but it doesn't always happen as quickly as we'd like. So how do you
Yeah,
manage that?
sometimes it'll pay like one bill or it'll pay a couple bills that month, and that's nice though. And I remember there's a great Stephen King quote where he said something where like, I consider you a professional writer if you cash a check for $200 and it pays for the electricity that month. So I'm like,
Right.
that's a pretty low bar to be a professional writer, but it feels very good and it's very apt. So making the time is difficult. I usually write at night, and I'm a terrible insomniac. So
Mhm.
usually if I'm awake anyways, I'm like, I might as well get some work done.
Yeah.
But it's getting harder because there's a lot of great things going on with our personal life. Like my wife is pregnant with our
Oh,
first kid.
congratulations.
Thank you. She's due in early November, and it's both exciting and terrifying. And
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, she just got her doctorate. We're getting ready to move. My work's been pretty crazy because emergency management communications. Yeah, I'm based in Maryland. We had the bridge
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like those those hours slip by more and
So
more. And
were
now, so
you involved in like the communication aspect of the bridge collapse?
I
Like,
got to be, yeah, a
yeah.
little bit. There was a whole unified command, and it's still ongoing.
Mm.
So I got to play a role in that, but it's nice. Hundreds of people, and then my dog just woke up. Hi, Parker. Good morning, buddy. Hey. So, and then
Yeah.
especially when the kid comes, I understand that the night riding might be more difficult depending on their sleep schedule. So it's really just, grab an hour when you can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I've personally like lately I've found that scheduling time has helped me stay pretty regular with writing. But yeah, you're right. When you have a newborn child who hasn't developed a schedule yet, or they've developed a schedule that is complete converse and opposite to what your schedule is, you definitely have to be able to pop in, pop out as you can, and maybe learn to hold a baby and write with one hand,
The
kind
one-handed
of
typing.
aspect. Yeah, the one-handed typing. Yeah. So no, that's great. That's awesome. Congratulations. Yeah, I have two kids myself. My oldest this past weekend just graduated with her doctorate. She is a doctor of veterinary medicine now. So I got to
Oh,
yeah.
congrats.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, she's I get to call my daughter doctor. And I told her every time I go see her now, anytime I schedule time to see her, it's officially a doctor's appointment because every
Exactly.
appointment that she has is a doctor's appointment. So yeah, what's your wife's doctorate in?
Education administration.
Oh,
So
nice.
she's currently a kindergarten teacher, but she is looking to get more on the planning side of it, the curriculum side, maybe work at a board of ed.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Cool.
pretty cool. And same deal, like, and I get to call her Dr. Brown all the time. And whenever we go to, like, we've got a friend's wedding coming up, the invitation will be Dr. Brown and Mr. Brown. Like, I'm there. I show up. I bring a little to it.
Oh, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown. You can call her Doc Brown. That's what's his name
I
in Back
know.
to the Future. Yeah.
Yeah,
She
Doc
may not
Brown.
like that though, never know. Something walks whistling past my house every night at 3:03 a.m. Oh, well, there's no
What a
a.m. I just
title.
added it.
What a
Yeah, that is a great no sleep title.
mm.
As in, as I've learned, as you've mastered as well, is that it's got to have when you're competing with advice animals and other BS on the scroll of Reddit, the endless scroll, you have to find something that somebody's oh, okay, well, what's
Yeah,
this? Click.
that's kind
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. So yeah, now this story, one of the things I like about it, it definitely does set the hook very quickly. So you learn quickly that, basically from the title that something walks past the house whistling every night at a certain time. And then you
Mhm.
kind of learn about the family, and then comes the rule, don't look at whatever was whistling. So yeah, so
Yep.
so where'd this story come from? How did it manifest?
So I remember very distinctly the first line kind of popping up as one of those where, it's almost like a gift. It just sort of assembles itself in your head. I'm sure it happened to you many times. And I can't even remember the first line perfectly now, but it was something like every night, no matter the weather, something walks whistling. And I think I said past my house, or it might have been down my street.
Yeah, yeah, you had it
But
very
then,
close. Every night, no matter the weather, something walks down our street whistling softly.
and it was all based on when I was a kid. The neighborhood in the story is I pictured exactly like my neighborhood,
Right.
where I grew up. And when I was younger, I had several good friends in that neighborhood. I was lucky where a bunch of my neighbors were in the same age, and we would hang out and we would do a lot of different, sleepovers at a friend's house when we were kids. And one of our favorite things to do at all these sleepovers was just try to scare the bejesus out of each other. And
Yes.
when you're 8 or 9 and you're up late telling ghost stories when you're not supposed to, one of the easiest things to do is be like, well, whatever monster that pops in your head is right outside. Like that was
Right.
the immediate threat. You're a kid, there's no like it's off in the woods, it's on the mountain because we're never going to be there. It's like this thing is right outside in the yard. And we never talked about the Whistler. I do remember having a dream one night about something whistling, and it was during one of those sleepovers, probably inspired by whatever monster we were talking about. And that always kind of stuck with me. So when I started writing for No Sleep and trying to pull up whatever horror I could out of my brain, that was something there. It's just those sleepovers, telling ghost stories, the monster's right outside, but you don't know what it is, and you don't know if it's real, and you're not sure how much you believe it is, like an 8-year-old. And from that feeling, I just jumped into what I thought it would be like if there actually was one of those ghost stories that came true.
Yeah.
And that was the start of the Whistler.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, like, there are certain sounds that out of context are creepy as hell. Like, if you're walking down the street, late at night and you hear a kid laugh, terrifying. Yeah. Again, somebody whistling and you're in the dark, also terrifying. Middle of the day, maybe not so much, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of those sounds that like, and that's one of the things I like about like horror stories is that you can take something that is not scary and put it in a situation where it becomes scary. And I think that's what happens with this is that, because it happens at a certain time every night, and it happens at 3:03, goes till 3:05. Yeah, it adds to that mystery of it. Why is it happening? Who's doing it? Why can't we look at it? And kind of the curiosity of children as to, well, why can't we look? It's like, what happens
Yeah.
if we do look? It's like, kind of those things that when I talked with C. Robert Cargill a little while ago, and he was talking about how he was one of his favorite story ideas now were what he called like the bogeys, like the things that parents tell their kids to make them behave. Like, oh, don't if you don't brush your teeth at night, they'll all fall out in the morning, things like that. So it kind of feels like kind of along those lines of like, well, don't look out the window if you hear somebody whistling. It's like, why not? It's like, just don't. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely a good way to summarize. And I think too, it's trying to go for, I know I was like a classic, it could be timeless. It is almost like a fairy tale, because that's
Right.
what I grew
Yeah.
up reading, and that's what I love is just like a fairy tale. And if you read older ones, a lot of them were completely twisted.
Right.
Hans Christian Andersen stuff is legitimate horror, and we look back
Yeah.
at it now because it's been Disneyfied, but it's like that's
Oh yeah.
really freaky.
Yeah. I always like telling people to read the original version of The Little Mermaid. And it's like, all right, that
Yeah.
does not
Wow.
happen the way it does in Disney. It's like she turns into sea foam and just
Mhm.
disappears. So yeah. Yes. And this was part of your collection, the House with a hundred doors collection, right?
Yes,
That you released.
yep,
So
the first one. Mhm.
nice. Yeah. So how many stories were in that? Do you remember? I'll put you on
Ooh,
the
I
spot.
think
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was probably in the was it 30 or so, 20 or 30? I just remember the word count had to be between 60 and 80,000, and I hit right around 70 for
Uh,
both collections that I did. So yeah.
yeah. I was always curious. Like I think, yeah, you're right. I think it is like more of they aim for more total words versus number of stories. Now, did you have to
Mhm.
put any n- exclusives on there, things that weren't on No
Yes.
Sleep before? So
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
going to
So that was
entice
a
people to.
nice mix. I know Velix has worked with a ton of no sleep writers, and it was a good experience. I did enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so you would have stuff that you would clean up from no sleep and actually go through and edit, which it's helpful because I definitely need more editing. I'm very fire stuff up and be ready to
Yeah.
go, and then come up with a few new ones as well so that they're only in the book.
Nice. Yeah.
It's fun.
This also was voted scariest story of the year, correct?
I think it was. I can't remember if it
Yeah.
was scariest or most immersive.
I think it was both. I just pulled it up on there. So scariest story 2019, most immersive story 2019, and also November of 2019. So you hit the
The
trifecta there. Yeah. The hat
uh,
trick. Yeah. So very cool.
Good year.
Yeah.
Good year.
Yeah, it was a very good year. Yeah. 2019 and then 2020 everything fell to shit.
Fell apart. No, well, just in the world too, but also no
Yeah.
sleep. Sleep really peaked around right, 2020, 2021, right during the
Yeah.
COVID era.
So this story is the one that you optioned, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. We won't go into much detail. I don't want, like I said, I don't want to violate any NDAs or anything like that because I know I know how those can be.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's very awesome. I look forward to now are you involved past handing in the story or is it
Nah, not for this one. The only thing would be if it, and I guess the whole project overall does well enough, and this one episode because it's part of uh, a few episodes that are in there.
Right.
It could be expanded. They have the option to do that, and if they do, I would come to the table again. But for right
Nice.
now, it was one of those where just they found it, they liked it, they wanted to use it as a foundation for the story, and go from there. And yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah, is this your first one being adapted for the screen or for like live action type show or
I want to say yes. I've had other stuff option before. I had another popular story that had no sleep called Marie on the Moon, which actually
Yes,
like
I love that one. I love that one.
thank you. Yes. Well, I feel like you and I, two of the big ones for the kind of like the wholesome sleep era with your
Yeah.
paralysis demon was another. I love that one. That's a
Yeah.
great one.
Yeah.
Um,
I like writing horror that makes people cry. Like they come to be scared and it's like, why am I
yeah,
crying?
yeah. That's a whole big thing. But that was the only story I think I ever got really nasty messages over where people were like, it was supposed to be scary. And there
Yeah.
was kind of a switch at the end. I was like, yeah, and that's fine. I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had that option before, but nothing's ever come of it. It came into the Schrodinger's part where it's like, you don't hear anything for months. It seems like the project's getting really hyped up. And
Yeah.
then it's just nothing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And that happens a lot with options, I guess, necessarily, and also with just the filmmaking process in general. There's like a hurry up process at the very beginning to get the option signed, and then dead air for maybe 8 to 12 months or however long the option period is, and then the occasional check in, hey, how's it going? Have you had any progress on it? And then maybe they reply back, maybe they don't, and then sometimes it just expires, or sometimes it gets extended, and yeah,
mm,
it's always a fun process, but not really fun. It's always a because yeah, as a writer, you definitely want to see your work get made. It's always fun to see that happen, but
yeah.
it's also kind of one of the there's a validation aspect of it, I guess. So yeah, definitely. But yeah, but there's also like depending on what it is. If it's just an option, that's one thing. But if you've already been paid for it, it's like all right, well, whatever they do with it now is on them. I've
Yes.
got all the check I'm going to get from them. So
Mhm.
it's in their hands. Whether they do anything with it, it's up to them. So yeah,
And I've
always
never
fun.
had that for a bigger project, but I've had that with like narrations
Mm.
where, and what a roller coaster that was starting from being just so flattered, like, wow, someone wants to read my story, to, oh, they're making a lot of money. It's weird that they wanted it for free. And then seeing how many people just take it without asking permission. And it got to the point where I became very cynical about it. And I have like an auto response that I've copy and pasted where if you want to use a story, this is, how I would do it, and
Yeah,
what I require. And most people don't even bother reading that. So I still get messages every couple of days where it's like, hey,
yeah,
love this. Can I just take it? No, you can't.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I am the
but
same
if you
way.
sell a narrator story and they decide that they don't want to use it, but they already paid for it, like whatever, that's fine.
Yeah,
Got the check.
yeah. Has anybody ever like bought a story or paid for a story to narrate and then they changed it in a way that you didn't like?
No,
Oh,
actually,
that's good.
surprisingly enough, I don't think any. I've had them change the title. I've had someone that stole it change all the names trying to avoid me finding
Trying to
it, but
hide it?
actually,
Yeah.
but it's fine. They only changed the title and the names. And another reader who had listened to them on YouTube was like, "I think this is your story. It's just different
Yeah.
characters." I'm like, that's very lazy trying to get away from DMCA strike. But
Yeah,
no,
that's
no one that is paid to use it officially has been like, let me tweak it. Most of them just read what's there.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I've only had a few things narrated. But there was one I had that it kind of irked me a little bit because they gender switched the main character from female to male. I was like, and it worked
Mhm.
because the character's name was Lexi in the my version, and they just changed it to Lex. I'm like, can't be too mad about it. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those little things that like, had I been asked, I would have rather they not changed it. But again, I got paid.
Was it a male voice for the narrator?
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
okay.
So I think that was part of it too, is it was they were trying to make it sound like it came from, a male a
Hmm.
male perspective because a guy was reading it. So yeah, I was irked at it a little bit. Then after I listened to it, I was like, all right, fine. So
Yeah, good
just
enough.
him, he sent me a check already. So what's next? What do you got in the pipeline? You working on anything or what
So
you
I
got going
have,
on?
and with just the personal life and work being so crazy this year, I essentially took a break since like last spring. I guess I haven't really done any real writing other than a few paid commissions that I had already agreed to.
Hmm.
But this last month or so, actually, I've started turning up again. I actually posted a no sleep in the first time in a year, just a throwaway fun one I had been working on, and caught the bug again a little bit. I don't know if I'll be posting to no sleep, but I am planning on just writing more, and I'm trying to just schedule next year's year. I finally tie myself to my chair and write a novel because I've had these ideas, and short stories so much easier as a format. I really do have attention issues, and it's something where I could pull it all together for 5 or 15,000 words, but if I want to do 75,000 or 125,000, it's more of a commitment sticking on the same subject. But I am feeling better. I finally, at 35 years old, got medication for ADHD this past year, which has been freaking amazing. So I'm hoping 2025 is the let me finally finish a novel, even if it's terrible, at least have it done.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that I tell a lot of people, because I'm involved on the screenwriting side and, on the, just the short stories and then trying to get into the novel space myself. But like, especially on the screenwriting side of things, one of the things that I harp on is like, you have to finish because if you don't finish, it never you can't
Doesn't count.
fix what you can't fix if it's not finished. And that's part of the challenge with it is that like, well, it's gonna suck. Like, yeah, it's supposed to suck. It's a first draft. All first draft sucks. And it's just part of the process. And yeah, finally, I guess that's my thing is like, you got to give yourself permission to be bad at something if you ever expect to be good at it. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up on it, myself included, was it's not a lesson that I learned quickly. So it's
Yeah.
definitely something like, what, I'm okay with this first bit draft being terrible. And I can, go back to it later and, tweak it or decide, this one stays in the drawer for a while because I don't think it's going to see the light of day. So that's the other hard part of writing is how much writing that doesn't show up on the page. There's like
I know.
for every 1,000 words that gets published, there's 10,000 that are in a random Word document somewhere that it's just
Uh,
yeah. I do a lot of and maybe that's just me, but I know some folks are a little more proficient with it,
well,
but I'm a bit of a I've kind of tried to transfer from being more of a pantser to a outliner, and it's gone okay a little bit, but it's still I still find myself just wanting to, all right, I've got a character and I've got a situation. Let me just throw him at it and see what
rip
happens.
it
So
out. Well, I was going to
yeah.
ask you if you were a prodigious note taker. Now, I'm trying to get a little more planning myself, especially for a large project like a novel,
Hmm.
but I don't really outline what I do right now is just take in like an absurd amount of notes.
Yeah.
Almost always just bullet points that would
Hmm.
look like the insane scrabblings of someone, trapped in a coffin trying to claw their way out. And that's what would be left on the roof if you looked at it, because it wouldn't make any sense to anyone else, I guess, except for me. But
Yeah.
from that is where I'll just like have these bullet points of just ideas or names or characters. And like you said, for every 1,000 words of a story, I probably have 2 to 4,000 words of just thoughts and ideas that
Yeah.
I'll usually have two in the same working doc, and I'll have it at the bottom, and that way I can kind of scroll down and reference and be like, oh, what was I going to do in the middle? And then they'll have a sentence or a bullet point that says like, cat, fireworks, goblins run out, and I'm like, oh yeah, that I remember now that was the next scene.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'd be interesting to see like if a bunch of writers just like, I mean, it'd be terrible to read, but just like, all right, share your idea Word document and let
None of the
people just kind of
least.
like how does this is like somebody were to look at my like idea Google Doc that I have on my phone every time I think of something I'll just write something down. It was like, all right, what does demon panda mean? Like there's no other
Yeah.
context to it, and just be like, all right, this is all something that could be used as evidence to have me committed. So there's no stream of consciousness to it at all. So
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I was gonna say from my perspective, yeah, I also try to like I line out what we call like the beats, like what are the major beats I want to hit in the story, especially since I've tried to position myself more towards selling to studios and producers and things like that. There's a different kind of it's a different market to cater to. So you definitely got to make it visual, and you got to make it, as concise as possible as you can make it, because, studio executives, producers, you know, they all have, I don't want to say they have short attention spans, but they have a lot of things in their periphery that they have to pay attention to. And if you don't catch their attention quickly, then they're going to move on to things, which is why I think we've seen such a huge uptick in stories from No Sleep getting the attention of, Hollywood, because No Sleep, again, because if you don't grab the attention of the reader, they're just going to scroll right down. Oh, there's a cat video. They're just going to scroll right past you to that funny cat video. So yeah.
It's
So
so much of the no sleep stuff too. It's, premise is king,
right.
where they don't need the completed story to be a work of art if you have a really great core concept, which no sleep is perfect for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. I think that's why. And I actually had some experience this past year getting to try to pitch to a couple different producers, and none of them really stuck. And I think maybe it's something where I need to improve my pitching, but
Yeah.
it's a very unique experience where you have to do, like, I started learning how to do log lines and do very basic, like you said, the beats. Here's a beat sheet, here's exactly, or one pager of what this
Yeah.
story is. And even that, I felt like it was too long and I was losing people. So I'm like trying to get better and better at
Yeah.
describing the story in a paragraph. Like that's all you get to really sell it.
Yeah, it is a different muscle from writing a story to have to do log lines and one pagers and things like that. There's so much, like I said, there's so much writing that isn't writing that to sell it and to get people's input on it, because obviously the first response is, well, just read it. It's like, well, I don't want to read it.
Yeah.
Give me the, if you can't summarize it, then I can't read it. So it's kind of one of those things where it's, yeah, it feels a little I don't want to say counterintuitive, but it does feel a little difficult to, like, all right, well, I've already wrote the thing. You could just read the thing. It's like, all right, I don't have, 20, 30 minutes or however long it's going to take to read the thing, or if in the case of a novel, many hours. So yeah,
Yeah.
just give me the one page, give me the high bullet points. And that's where, yeah, it can be fun and very challenging to just kind of like condense that story down into a single sentence and kind of getting
Yeah.
to that core element of it. And then you send that, you've got a story in mind, or you've got the story already written, and you write the log line and you kind of put it out there. It's like, nah, pass. It's just, yeah,
Exactly.
doesn't hit me. And that's always part of writing, I think, is there's so much rejection with it, because I mean that's just the way it is. It's a very competitive market, whether it's, trying to get onto into literary magazines or on, podcasts, things like that. There's a lot of people who would love to be doing it, and because of that, there's a lot to choose from. Same thing with screenwriting, same things with novel writing. There's a lot of people throwing work at them. So figuring
Yeah.
out a way to get noticed is kind of the hard part. That sometimes every time you feel like you have it figured out, then, and that's hard, because, like, especially if you're excited about a project and then the person you send is like, nah, I don't feel anything about that.
Don't feel it. Doesn't work. Or it's not what we're looking for. I got a lot
Yeah.
of, I liked it, but it's not what we're looking for. And
Yeah.
it's eliminating. And like you said, there's so much in the actual, the process behind writing, especially if you're trying to put words down to get paid
Yeah.
to some degree.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
you never think about going in.
Yeah. Yeah. And the not for me's aren't bad. Like, I mean, that's basically, and one of the things that I've kind of learned to kind of help myself through the rejection is, like, all it really takes is one yes. So all these no's don't necessarily mean there won't be a yes in the future. It's just, sometimes you do have to look at, the pile of no's. Like, are they all making the same comment? Like, are they all finding the same thing wrong with it? Is it, from those are the notes, oh, okay, well, let me use that. But if it's all like, nah, it just doesn't fit you know, our selection, or it's just not something we're looking for, those are a little easier. That's just, oh, we're not really looking for that. So thank you, but no. But if you get a response back, that's always the other thing. So silence is
Yeah,
also rejection.
it's good when you do hear from folks. I know that speaking of lit magazines, I think I've sent five or six stories to the Dark magazine, and
Right.
I love that their rejections are so fast. Like
Oh, I
it,
agree.
as soon as it gets out of my email, I'll usually have something back and be like, "Hey, we're not looking for this, but good enough. Keep
Yeah.
trying."
Yeah.
And it's nice for some of the bigger pitches. I've tried to reframe my mind to how can I tell this, like you said, in a sentence or two, but even to someone who's not a hostile audience, but maybe isn't a horror fan. And I think a lot of it
Right.
maybe turns into a game of telephone as well. So you are pitching to a producer or an agent or some intermediary, and then you have to realize they're then going to have to pitch to a bigger producer or a
Mhm.
studio, and the people who sit on a studio board, they might not have read anything except for the Wall Street Journal in 30 years. So how do you sell them this horror story in a way that it's going to be like this has mass appeal or this is and I noticed too with a lot of the no sleep stuff that's been picked up, a common element in a lot of them is that they aren't crazy in terms of visual demands or effects just from reading the story that you would expect. And I think
Mhm.
that that is very great because there's been sort of a renaissance of grounded horror over the last couple of
Right.
years, the movies and the shows that we're seeing out there, and everything Mike Flanagan's doing, which is fantastic.
Yes.
So as that stuff gets more popular and you kind of tell what studios are looking for, I think you'll see more stories like that. I actually don't know if No Sleep is now is popular for because there was a time like a year when the first couple stories, I'm sure you remember, got picked up. Everyone was like, this is going to be huge. Hollywood's going to be
Mhm.
rifling through No Sleep all the time, looking
Yeah.
for stories.
Yeah. I think it
Um,
was. I mean, I know there was a couple of them before, and like the patient who drove me on to medicine, and also the was it the Spire in the Woods? I think it was, were like the two first ones that kind of came out
yeah,
as like big sales, and then there was a little bit of like a lull for a little bit, and then I think it was the Query brothers with the
The
I
Ranch,
know
right?
the not yeah, the ranch. What's the novel version is on my shelf here is why I'm looking back at it. Old
Oh,
Country. So
uh,
so yeah, so that kind of kicked off the
Gold
kind of
Rush.
the Verve title. Yeah, because Verve is one of the agencies that is really into the short story packaging
Hmm.
game. So they've done a really good job, and that's where they did the work for me, which I'm very grateful for as well. But yeah, it's definitely, like you said, it's definitely one of the big key elements of it is, yeah, it's grounded. It's not, too, it's got to be something that's easy to just like get in and like you said, just kind of be able to explain it in a sentence. Like,
Yeah.
a couple buys a ranch that has, again, all these crazy rules they have to follow. Congratulations on the child on the way. Yeah, definitely
Thank
gonna
you.
I expect to see some like child related like parenting horror in the coming year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it'll be great. Like I said, I've got both of my daughters. Both of them are in their 20s now, so it's definitely a scary time, a fun time, but yeah, I'm sure you guys will do fine. But yeah,
Thank you.
it's something you just kind of feel through it. So yeah,
And
and
it's fun because you're right. Whatever stage in life you're at, I guess, starts to influence your stories a lot. I know there's a very big difference from the ones I started 8 years ago versus now as I have a family and a different job and settling down. And it's just new things that you're afraid of. And
right,
having
yeah.
a kid comes with a host of new terrors that you didn't even know were there, just worrying about them all the time. And mine's not even born yet.
Yeah, the months you spend baby proofing the house and things like that, and then yeah, it'd be like first few months, obviously, because they're not moving around. You're like, oh, everything's fine, and then they'll always find that one thing that you didn't plan on them to do. Like, oh, okay, they climbed that. I didn't realize that was climbable. Yeah, so well, I mean, you have a dog at least, so you're kind of familiar with that
Yeah, he's crazy.
wiliness. Yeah,
Trying to eat. Gosh, when I take him on walks, like if he spots a mushroom growing in the ground 100 yards
yeah,
away, he'll try to get there. I'm like, no, don't eat that. You don't know what it is. And
yeah.
I can anticipate myself having that same conversation with a kid. Like, don't eat that. You don't know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. As a parent, you will say phrases that you never thought you would ever say. It's one of those things like that's something else to start writing down. Like all the words, like I remember a particular conversation I had with my oldest daughter when she was 2 years old. We gave her a piece of bacon and she would neither chew it up or spit it out. She just held it in her mouth like it was a piece of like she had like a, like a tobacco chew in and was just kind of
Yeah.
sucking on it. And I was like, are you going to swallow the bacon? No.
Huh?
Are you gonna spit it out? No. And then we finally had to just fish out this, she had it in her mouth so long that it was white, like she had sucked all the color and flavor out of it. I'm like, ugh. So yeah. And now she's a veterinarian. So
Crazy.
yeah,
Crazy
yeah,
life.
it's crazy. Yeah, and then like with the dogs, yeah, since I've been doing more Zoom meetings lately, like I've found that is the time when I ask them to be quiet that they find something to get into. So like the one of previous ones I've done, after I finished and got up, I had found that they had eaten an entire bag of cotton balls.
Oh,
Why cotton balls? I have no idea. And then just proceeded to
throw
throw
a
them
cotton
up on the
on it. Yeah.
floor. And it's like, why would you do that? What? They have no flavor. Why would you do that? So
It can't, even the texture can't be
I
good.
was gonna say, yeah, nothing about the only thing I can figure is that, oh, this is the stuff that's inside the toys that I chew up. So maybe that's, it's easier to get to. They don't have to work.
Yeah.
They don't have to work through the exterior of a chew
The
toy.
filling
It's
is
just
right there.
it's just the filling. This is what I'm going for. And it's
I
like,
had a coworker not too long ago, actually. Her dog, I guess she had been cooking and she had spilled some chicken and stuff on the counter. So she had wiped up the chicken and whatever residue
mhm.
and put all that away and left the towel on the counter. And she said her dog ate the entire towel.
Yep,
And they ended up, luckily, it was a very big dog, so there's room. And they went to the vet and the dog was fine and passed it. But like just a kitchen towel, just
yeah,
gone.
yeah,
At least it smelled like chicken, so I can kind of understand. But,
yeah.
yeah.
It was like, but that's the part of dogs. Yeah, they find ways to eat things that you would never think they would eat. So yeah. Do you have any other animals? Just the one dog, or
Just the one dog, and he's a Weimaraner. Very high energy, very only child syndrome too. So we're actually bringing him back into training. We got him puppy trained, but we're taking him back to the trainer to get him ready for having a kid in the house because we understand
yeah,
sometimes dogs, especially like he's all COVID puppy. He is so attached to my wife and I.
yeah,
Um, that we really want to prep him for the next person joining our family. So there's the other horror of just like, is the whole family going to get along? But it's neat because every little thing gives you ideas. Even just during this conversation, I thought of a couple little weird things that I can do, and it's going to go into that big googly mess of bullet points. And that would be
yeah,
really cool if just one day someone publishes or you start like an author Twitter thread or something where it's like, show us a snapshot of your crazy
yeah,
notebook.
yeah,
Just nonsense.
yeah. That'd be cool. Yeah. Well, all righty. I appreciate you taking the time to chat today again. Like I said, a year in the making. So, and good luck with all you have coming up. Definitely with the family expanding and getting back into the writing, and of course with the sale of the story. Like I said, I'll keep an eye out for it. Looking forward to seeing how that comes out. So, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
thanks. Me too. I'm
Awesome.
excited about their maybe it'll get on Shutter. I know it's going to be on Screenbox, so we'll see where I can watch it in a little bit. But yeah, I appreciate you taking the time and congrats on getting the podcast up and running.
Check the links in the show notes for how you can stay up to date with Travis's work and latest releases, and be sure to check out Whistle in the Woods, the TV adaptation of the story we discussed today, which will appear on Tales from the Void this October on Screenbox. If there's an author you'd like to hear from, or if you're an author who might want to chat, email storyclubpod@gmail.com. Thanks for joining us today at the Storytellers Club. I have been your host, Chris Hicks, and until next time, thanks for listening.